first and foremost, we want to get into this discussion here about this Joe Biden impeachment bombshell. I have an update. So you know that the GOP members of the House have decided to file an impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden in reference to his business dealings with Hunter Biden and countries like China, countries like Ukraine, etc. Now, that was announced, I feel like, a couple of weeks ago, but for the most part, I do feel like mainstream media has remained somewhat silent on this particular issue, especially liberal mainstream media. But now there is new information that I think people need to hear. I want to start with this clip here from Fox News, where it says jaw-dropping legal experts reveal the next steps in the Biden impeachment inquiry. And then we're going to get into this issue with Matt Gaetz and what does he have to do with all of this? Because I think that's very important. You need to hear about what has been leaked from Matt Gaetz. Let's go ahead and get started with this clip here from Fox News.
Meanwhile, we are looking at the House's hearing. The House held its first impeachment inquiry hearing yesterday against President Biden. Here's Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer laying things out for us this week. Watch.
At least 10 times, Joe Biden lied to the American people that he never spoke to his family about their business dealings. He lied by telling the American people that there was an absolute wall between his official government duties and his personal life. Let's be clear. There was no wall.
Law professor Jonathan Turley, one of the witnesses yesterday, broke down how President Biden could have benefited from foreign influence peddling. Watch.
Can a benefit to your family be a benefit to you?
It is. There's been repeated statements that you need to show that President Biden accepted direct money in order for this to constitute a benefit, even under criminal cases that deal with bribery, extortion, the Hobbs Act. The courts actually have rejected that. They've said that money going to family members is in fact a benefit.
I don't know what happened there. That's weird. Hold on one second. I don't know why ad's showing. I guess because I have to redo my ad blocker and everything now, but let me just let that play and let me actually pull that out while that does that. Notice what he just said there. That piece I think was really important. He said we have to show that there have been direct payments. Okay, direct payments. So hold on to that and keep that in mind. That's going to be important when we get to this discussion about Matt Gaetz.
Joining me right now is former federal prosecutor and Fox News contributor Andrew McCarthy. Andy, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hi, Maria.
What is your assessment of that hearing and where we are right now in terms of this impeachment inquiry? Give us your opinion.
Well, you know, Maria, I thought that there were a lot of people yesterday who said they were disappointed because there didn't seem to be any smoking gun or anything that came out of the hearing. And I just think that's a testament to the success of the committee process going up into the impeachment inquiry, because if you knew nothing at all about any of this going into yesterday, and they told you that the Biden family between 2014 and 2019 raked in $24 million from corrupt and anti-American regimes, or at least people connected to them, that would be jaw-dropping. So part of the reason I think people came away from yesterday's hearing a little bit disappointed is because we've heard all this stuff before because of the tremendous progress that the other committees made.
We're going to pause here because I want to read this part. House Republicans release memo on scope of impeachment inquiry. This will span the time of Joe Biden's vice presidency to the present, including his time out of office. So this is not just right before his presidency, during his presidency, but also during his time as vice president. So they went pretty far back, and will investigate whether Hunter Biden as vice president, will investigate whether Biden as vice president / president changed policy because of money given to the family. Those two pieces here are incredibly important.
And yesterday was just a pretty standard hearing that you would do at the beginning of anything as important as an impeachment inquiry, to explain what is required for impeachment and give a general outline of what you think you're going to prove.
And this part right here, this is something else that they will look at. Did Joe Biden enrich himself and family by giving foreign interests the sense they would receive access to him? So that piece is incredibly important, right? Like, so one of the reasons why, if you were not born in the United States, you cannot be president in the United States is that they see you as a risk. They see you as, you know, if you were offered money for information from your home country, that you may be willing to take that money and give up that information. So that piece right there is incredibly important in the sense that they would receive access to him. The other piece here, did Joe Biden use his power to impede, obstruct, or hinder investigations and prosecutions of Hunter Biden? That is also important. Did he use his power to protect his son? So hold on to that.
In the coming hearings. And I think that's what they did yesterday. And, you know, their process is a little bit unwieldy. They had 47 different members asking 5-minute rounds of questions. So it's hard to, you know, it's hard to stay with one thread for any sustained length of time. But, you know, this is going to be a long process.
Well, let's talk about some of the potential evidence that the House Republicans have talked about. This $260,000 in wire payments. There was one check for $250,000 and another check for $10,000 from Hunter Biden's Chinese business partners, labeled as a personal investment. Despite Hunter's legal team claiming that the money was part of a loan, the beneficiary address for that wire was listed as Joe Biden's Delaware home. And I find this really striking because at the time, Hunter was living in California.
That part right there. So they are saying that one of the wire transfers went to Joe Biden's home in Delaware. Now, again, it was Hunter Biden that had the business dealings. So why would the money go to Joe Biden's home instead of going to Hunter Biden's home? And they're claiming that Hunter Biden during that time was living in California. So they believe that this is some type of proof to show that that money did at some point go directly to Joe Biden, and not just to Joe Biden, but to his residence. So that piece is very crucial.
So Hunter's living in California, but his Chinese partners decide to send $250,000 to Joe Biden's home. And by the way, this is not like a long time ago. You know, this is 2019. So, you know, in 2019, as Joe Biden is getting ready to run and he's in the middle of his campaign for president, he receives $250,000 at his home from Chinese business partners.
Imagine if we knew that before Joe Biden ran for president. Imagine if we knew that back in 2019. You see, these are the type of things that would have been helpful for people to know. I think that could have maybe changed some people's decisions in reference to whether or not they were going to support Joe Biden. But imagine if people had, American voters had that key piece of information back in 2019 when it happened, or going into 2020. Imagine.
I asked House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer about the White House's excuse on this. And here's what he told me yesterday on this program. Watch.
Hunter Biden was living with his dad during COVID. Well, there's two problems with that lie that Ian Sam said. Number one, COVID hadn't happened yet. We were 6 months away from COVID happening. And number two, Hunter lived in California. And that's according to his own book.
That part right there. The place of residence in 2019. In 2019, they're trying to basically, the defense, they're basically trying to say that Hunter Biden was living with Joe Biden during that time. And that's why the wire transfer went to Joe Biden's residence in Delaware. Okay. They said he was living with him during the pandemic. 2019, the pandemic had not started yet, people. The pandemic started in 2020. So that lie doesn't add up. I can't even believe they tried to go with that one. You think American people forgot when the pandemic started? Let's continue.
At that time, he lived in California. So the wire was sent to Joe Biden's house in Delaware while he was a candidate for president.
So at the same time, Andy, the House Ways and Means Committee released an email from an IRS agent writing about a CNN producer who claims to have a Hunter Biden email where Hunter expected his legal stuff, quote unquote, to go away when his father became president. And
that's Hunter Biden using his privilege, right? That's Hunter Biden using his privilege. I have all these legal issues. I may have some possible criminal issues, but it looks like my dad is going to become president, so I won't have to deal with these things after all. This is people that come from families that have power, families that have privilege. This is an example of the siblings trying to use, you know, their parents' power and privilege to get them out of their jabs. Think about this. Now they're saying they have an email that says this. Once again, you would have thought from Hillary Clinton's emails, you would have thought that enough people, particularly those that have any type of connection in Washington, that they would know it's probably not best to put certain things in an email. But no, they still don't get it. Hunter Biden, not too bright, right? Not too bright that he's willing to put something like that in an email, which is actually him confirming that he knew he did bad things.
How is the White House going to, wash away these things? And what is your assessment of those two things in terms of evidence?
Well, first, Maria, didn't you and I also expect the case to go away when Joe Biden became president? I mean, who in America didn't expect the case to go away on Hunter when Joe became president? Look, I think if there's an error here, it's that we've indulged, or the committees have indulged too much, this idea that, you know, there's Hunter Biden's business dealings, and we have to figure out what, if anything, Joe Biden knew about them, what connection he may have had to them. And I think that's just the wrong way to look at it. The right way to look at this is that Joe Biden was the business. There's no business without Joe Biden. He could have shut this down in 10 seconds if he objected to it, and yet it went on for years and years. Without him, there's no business. Access to him is the business.
That word right there, that key word, access. You see the problem here? And this is what they're going to try to argue. Because he has that access to Joe Biden, that's how the business happened in the first place, because of who his father was. So the argument that they're making is that without Joe Biden, this business transaction doesn't even happen. So there is the connection. He is connected. He is involved. This is all very interesting.
And as you mentioned with our friend John Turley before, and we also got this from yesterday from the witness, the woman who was a top official in the tax division at the Justice Department. If you make payments to somebody by paying somebody close to them, like a close family member, that's a constructive payment to the person. That's the way the IRS looks at it. That's the way the government looks at it. You know, you can't get a security clearance in the United States unless you fill out a book-length application where you have to lay out not only your own transactions and your own connections with people overseas, but all of your close family members, because that's the way the government has always looked at it. That's the way people get blackmailed. That's the way that benefits get conferred from foreign powers to government officials. It's what the intelligence community worries about. So I just don't see why we're continuing to talk about this as if it were Hunter Biden's business when you see $25 million going one way and no value coming back the other way. The only thing here that's valuable is access to Joe Biden.
That part is very important. And I think that piece right there is what they are going to do, what they're going to use to push back against Joe Biden. That without you, this does not happen. And security clearances aren't easy to get. So this is all very telling. This is all very telling. Now, when you see what I have to show you from Matt Gaetz, that is going to throw a wrench in this entire impeachment inquiry. Because we have leaked audio of Matt Gaetz, who's kind of saying the opposite here. I don't know what this is all about with Matt Gaetz, but that could actually cause issue with this. And as she mentioned, this is going to be a long process. So for people who are maybe somewhat getting excited that this is going to be done or all said and done with before 2024 election, we don't know that. We don't know. But I think that's what the GOP is trying to accomplish.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why from the beginning, I said this is a Joe Biden investigation, not a Hunter Biden investigation only. And the fact is it's laughable when the Democrats say that Joe Biden doesn't have any fingerprints on this because the whole business was Joe Biden. And we're also seeing evidence of a cover up, that the DOJ knew all of this, and yet they still, turned a blind eye. But instead, they're doubling down on Trump. One of your latest op-eds asks the question, did a judge go too far in New York's civil case against Trump? Tell me more about that. I mean, this is a...
We'll pause it here because this case, the civil case against Donald Trump, I don't think is the one that Trump is going to really have to worry about as much. I think the one he's really going to have to worry about is the case in Georgia, the case with Fulton County. I think that's going to be the one that they're really going to be able to get him, is that one. Not necessarily this New York one. And the New York one, again, that is like a civil thing and it involves his business dealings and stuff. That one I don't think is going to be the one that can possibly prevent him from running for president in 2024. I think it's going to be that case that's coming out of Georgia. But the point that they're trying to make here is, was there a conflict of interest? Is there differential treatment when it came to Joe Biden's business dealings and Donald Trump's business dealings and the DOJ? Now, of course, Merrick Garland has issued statements before saying that the DOJ is not partisan, but I think we all know that's not true. I think we all know that's not true. I think that there have been many people, not just the DOJ, but many people in Washington, D.C., as well as media outlets that have gone out of their way to try to cover up this issue for Joe Biden, and have also tried to cover up the sexual assault allegation from Tara Reade against Joe Biden. We will have to wait and see where this goes. But I do have this bombshell as well. This is something I was not expecting. Apparently, when it comes to this impeachment inquiry, it turns out that Matt Gaetz, who obviously is a Republican congressman, he's saying the exact opposite. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. According to Matt Gaetz, this impeachment inquiry is not valid and actually is not going anywhere. Listen to this. I was surprised to hear this, but there is leaked audio that shows a conversation with Matt Gaetz where he is actually saying that this impeachment effort is actually not even serious and it doesn't stand a chance. Listen to this, folks.
NBC News, Garrett, as you know, has a video of Congressman Gaetz denouncing the House impeachment inquiry, the latest one, as a political stunt at a fundraiser. Now, Jim Jordan was really the brain, I guess the mastermind of that, behind all of it. So is that directed at Jim Jordan? What's your takeaway?
I think you're going to hear the audio in a second, but Matt Gaetz is basically, she just said he's saying that this was actually just a political stunt.
Well, Gaetz took great pains later in this fundraiser to not make this about Jim Jordan. Some context here, Andrea. If you watched the debate on the House floor on Tuesday that led to Kevin McCarthy's ouster, Gaetz was pretty critical of the impeachment inquiry even then. He called it failure theater. And we're learning now, thanks to the reporting of my colleague Catherine Doyle, that this is something he was saying back in late September at a private Zoom-only fundraiser
Private Zoom fundraiser apparently was not so private after all.
Very critical of the effort as it existed at the time to investigate the Biden family. Here's what he told those donors behind the scenes.
Pause before we get into the audio. So again, notice what he said. Here's what he told those donors. These are donors that he's meeting with. So could that have an influence on what he said in that meeting? Possibly. But I think you need to hear what he said.
I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. I mean, Kevin McCarthy didn't even have the votes for an impeachment inquiry, and you're telling me that he's somehow going to get the votes for an impeachment? So I think that Kevin McCarthy just wants the specter of impeachment so that he's able to subjugate any threat to his power as an impeachment impediment.
Now, Gaetz is a pretty...
Hold on here. Let's go back. Let's go back, because you don't usually see them turn on members of their own like this, but because it involved Kevin McCarthy, that could be the reason. Listen.
I don't believe that we are endeavoring upon a legitimate impeachment of Joe Biden. I mean, Kevin McCarthy didn't even have the votes for an impeachment inquiry, and you're telling me that he's somehow going to get the votes for an impeachment? So I think that Kevin McCarthy just wants the specter of impeachment so that he's able to subjugate any threat to his power as an impeachment impediment.
And now Kevin McCarthy is gone. So think about that. So this is Matt Gaetz. I don't know if you want to say he's speaking out against his own party, but he's more so speaking out against Kevin McCarthy. And Kevin McCarthy has now been ousted as speaker. But Matt Gaetz is basically telling you that this impeachment inquiry is not even that serious, or not serious. Or as Nick, my comrade Nick from RBM would say, unserious, is unserious. And this is going to be very important, because the thing is like, we do know that Matt Gaetz obviously is very vocal. Right? Like, he forced the vote against Kevin McCarthy. He's the reason that Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as speaker. He drove that, right? So we know that he has a powerful voice and people are going to listen to what he has to say, whether they agree with him or not. But to have him, a member of the Republican Party, tell you that, no, this impeachment inquiry against Joe Biden is not serious, that could actually hurt the impeachment inquiry. Let's continue.
Now, Gaetz is a pretty unpopular figure up here on Capitol Hill right now, especially among Republicans. That's not going to make him any more popular within his conference. But he's also proven to be a pretty astute observer of the political dynamics. And I think in a situation where you're looking at a, divided Congress, Democrats controlling the Senate, the idea that an impeachment inquiry is not going to go anywhere and that it may have been useful for Kevin McCarthy in that moment is an analysis that if you gave a lot of these lawmakers truth serum, they would probably agree with. Andrea?
Okay, so he doesn't believe that this is actually going to go anywhere. And I've been thinking about this for quite some time. I remember when the Democrats actually had the majority in the House and they pushed forth the impeachment inquiry in reference to Donald Trump, and, it didn't go anywhere. Even if it does pass in the House, it has to pass in the Senate. And same thing happened with Bill Clinton. I remember this very well. It didn't pass in the Senate. So Bill Clinton got to keep his seat as well. So I honestly don't think, and I'm just keeping it real with you guys, I do not think that Joe Biden is going to be impeached. I think it will not pass in the Senate, even if it does pass in the House. And I think it'll be hard for it to pass in the House as well, to be honest with you, because some of the Republicans do not approve of it. One of them apparently being Matt Gaetz. He doesn't think this is legit. So we will continue to follow this story, but we also need to ask ourselves, what's in this for Matt Gaetz? You notice he's been in the media a lot recently, right? What is Matt Gaetz trying to do? Does he want to be speaker? Is Matt Gaetz going to run for a higher level position? I don't know. But I start to wonder when I see politicians in the media a lot, especially back to back. But we'll have to keep an eye on it, guys. But remember what they said, that direct payment that went to Joe Biden's residence in Delaware, that's going to be crucial.